Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. My name is Jasleen Kaur, and I'm a transcriber on the Guru Granth Sahib Project. We're excited to announce the release of Sheikh Farid Ji's first 15 Saloks or stanzas in a series of releases. Sheikh Farid Ji also might be familiarly known to you as Baba Farid Ji. He's a 12th to 13th century Sufi, and also one of the 15 Bhagat contributors to the Guru Granth Sahib, also known as the pioneer of Punjabi Sufi literature. The title of Sheikh is really important here. It can be understood from two angles. One of like just straight up a religious title, a preacher or a minister, but also more deeply as something that denotes particular social and political positioning of high status. So in these series of Saloks, you'll see that Sheikh Farid Ji self-identifies as a sheikh, which suggests that he acknowledges his position of power and influence and privilege. And you'll also see a lot of references that are Quranic or largely like Islamic, because he is a self-identified Muslim, a Sufi who follows Sharia or Islamic law. So he's very much like situated in these very particular religious and legal systems, and his Saloks often comment on those things or refer to them implicitly. In these Saloks, we see Sheikh Farid drawing on cultural understandings of marriage ceremonies and wedding traditions to explore this larger idea of death as a kind of like universal wedding that all seekers eventually experience, or all people, I guess, is a better way to say it. And in these Saloks, he urges us as seekers towards devotion to IkOankar, to the One, and offers both personal and global reflections on the true purpose of life being making an effort towards that devoted relationship. So that's a whole lot, but I thought I would give you that context and then tell you about two Saloks that have really stuck out to me, because there's something very cool that happens in Sheikh Farid Saloks, which is that every so often the gurus offer a Salok after one of his Saloks that maybe expands on an idea or clarifies or like makes an idea more vast and nuanced and maybe a little even more compassionate, because Sheikh Farid Ji's tone is very straight talking, which I do appreciate. But so I wanted to take you guys through Saloks 12 and 13. In Salok 12, Sheikh Farid writes, Farida, so self-address, Kalni Jinna Naravya, Tauli Rave Koe, Kar Sai Syo Pirhari, Rang Navella Hoy. O Farid, those who did not enjoy IkOankar while having black hair, hardly anyone enjoys IkOankar while having gray hair. Attach love with the beloved sovereign, its color is new every day. The beloved sovereign, the beloved owner, you could also say. So in this 12th stanza, Sheikh Farid is saying, you know, he's reflecting on his own time that he's spent and saying that those of us who don't experience that like joy of connection with IkOankar, who don't cultivate the relationship when we're young and we're able and things are exciting, we don't have the ability to do that when we're older, or we rarely experience that when we're older. And, you know, I think there's like so much truth to this. We like think that spirituality is for when we're older and things in our lives have like calmed down. We think that when we're young, we're going to like have fun and put off spirituality till later. We think that that's like the time for connection with the divine is when we're in our old age. And Sheikh Farid is challenging that. He's urging us to reflect on the habits we're forming in our youth that will carry us through every stage of life. And he's saying, you know, seek that devotion and love with IkOankar now, because that's the love that has that kind of like young sort of puppy love quality, or like first love quality of being ever new and ever fresh, no matter how old we are. We all, I think maybe, or we will, if we don't know already, we know that like feeling of worldly love and relationships where there's this sense of excitement at a budding relationship, of the newness it brings and the way that like it seems to like change shape and color with each day. And eventually that love sort of stagnates. And we also comment on these things when we're like, oh, you're like an old married couple, right? Like there's something that changes in the relationship. But Sheikh Farid is saying this love with IkOankar is ever new and ever fresh. It'll always feel like you're in that sort of excitement stage, perpetually. So there's an urging to to engage with IkOankar now. And then we come to Salok 13, where Guru Amar Das Sahib takes that idea and expands on it. And Guru Amar Das Sahib says, Farida, Kali Tauli Sahib Sada hai, Jeko Chit Kare, Apna Laya Piram Na Lage, Je Loche Sab Koe. Eho Piram Pyala Khasam Ka, Je Pave Te De. As always, excuse my pronunciation, I struggled a little bit with that one, but the English translation is, O Farid, the master is always there, whether the hairs are black or gray, if one remembers that sovereign, that owner within the consciousness. But the love developed by own self, by our own selves, is not attached, even though everyone yearns for it. This love cup is of the divine husband, the spouse, IkOankar, who gives it to that being with whom the divine husband is pleased. So this expansion is really important because we have to remember Guru Amar Das Sahib becomes Guru at age 73. So he knows from really personal experience that it's never too late to engage in this relationship. He discovered the love of IkOankar at that age, and he understands the nature and will of IkOankar to center on grace, which is not to say that Sheikh Farid doesn't know it to be that way, but he's emphasizing that grace in his stanza that follows. And so even in this urgency that Sheikh Farid instills in us to make an effort towards a devoted relationship with IkOankar, there's an understanding that Guru Amar Das Sahib instills in us of the compassion of IkOankar. And he emphasizes that that one is always present regardless of age. So that color of the hair on our head actually ends up being irrelevant. It's actually never too late to begin. And he emphasizes too that the love that we want so badly, even as we make an effort towards it, only really takes root, like attaches itself through the grace of the one. And so all we can do is make that effort and kind of prepare ourselves. All we can do is try to cultivate the virtues within ourselves so that we may become pleasing to the spouse, to IkOankar. And we can exist in that sort of ever new, ever changing, ever fresh love if we make that effort towards cultivation, towards praising the one, remembering the one, inculcating the virtues of the one, and preparing ourselves to receive that kind of cup of love. So these are things that have kind of hit me, I've been thinking a lot about, but I really encourage you to explore these Saloks on your own. They explore a lot of things about like what causes us to be in forgetfulness. They offer remedies. They show us how to cultivate virtues, remembrance, devotion, and humility. They remind us often that our time is limited and that we ought not to delay. And they show us how we might experience that bliss of connection, how we might use the rest of our time here wisely, how we might make these lives fruitful before the day that we are to be wed. So as always, there's commentaries, there's translations, there's transcreations, there's footnotes and dictionary entries for you to explore and to sit with and see what Sheikh Farid Ji is saying to you directly and lovingly and with a sense of humor. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.